All right. Welcome, everyone, to this Mastermind, Future of Organizations. I'm really happy to have you all here. So today what we're going to do is we're going to have a chat with some amazing people who have come from different perspectives at this topic of future of organizations. And we're going to hear from all of them what their main concerns are around this welcome everyone. So I'd just like to take a moment to speak a little bit about the topic itself, and then after a couple of minutes of that, I would like to invite all of our circle members here to introduce themselves and give us a little bit of an insight on where they're coming from, what perspective they're coming from at this topic. So let me just give a little introduction. So obviously, the way we do business has been changing a lot over the past sort of, I don't know, well, forever actually, but I think very rapidly over the past sort of 20, 30 years, it's been changing quite rapidly, the way that we do business, and technology has obviously played a big role in that, and the fact that we're sort of transitioning to this knowledge economy. And people also have different needs now in terms of what they want to experience at work. More and more people want to have some kind of purpose or meaning in their work. Fewer people are willing to just go to those 9-to-5 jobs just for the paycheck. There has to be more than that. And so, yeah, we'll have a look at how can we're sort of transitioning, how can organizations be more sustainable? How can they maybe even go beyond just doing no harm, but actually do good? And what aspects do we have to consider if we want to change in their work, the way that organizations work? And maybe also interesting for new organizations that are forming now, what can they take into consideration? So, my name is Carolyn. I'm here from GaiaNet, and GaiaNet is a platform that is bringing together people, co-creators, purpose-driven co-creators who want to create like new ways of living and working together. And we're creating a platform for that to bring everyone together. And so obviously, we have an interest in this topic, and that's why we're hosting this camp here. And I'd like to go around and have everyone introduce themselves. So why don't we just switch on the random order and give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. Okay, so let's start with Jan.
So my name is Jan Vermeijeren. I live in Belgium. I have two brands. The one is Soul Business, and the second one is The Compassionate Leader. With Soul Business, most of the time I see myself jumping around. Okay, so I enable consulting, training, and software companies to attract more customers, but do it in a way that is more compassionate. So it's not kind of a selling process, but it's a process to help them already get results while you explain it to them and building a relationship, so they or become customers or they become ambassadors. And for me, it's it's a total different way than I experienced in the past in the companies I worked for or with, or the suppliers that are trying to get in touch with me. So that's, I like to do that as well. And then the second brand is A Compassionate Leader. And there I also focus most of the time on consulting and software companies to help them get into what I call the inspiring vibe. So I have 4 vibes: negative, neutral, positive, and inspiring. And one of the things I learned is that in the past I thought everything was negative or positive. It's a very binary, while there are many companies, large companies, are in a neutral vibe. And most of the approaches are not really taking that into account. And then the inspiring vibe, not many companies are there yet, but it's important to have teams, but also leaders in that inspiring vibe, because they're the vibe of the leader is the ceiling for the vibe of the team or the organization.
Right.
And that's kind of what I bring to the table here, I think, or I think some of the colleagues here are also more or less in that perspective, to see how we can raise the consciousness of the leaders.
Great. Thank you very much. So thank you. Thank you very much. So you can take yourself out of the circle now. Holly, why don't you jump into the middle?
Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here with you all. And what a wonderful topic. And so I primarily work with inspired entrepreneurs and executives, very much like you, Jan. And these people generally have some sense of purpose, may not be fully clarified, and they may not be aligned. So what I do is help them gain clarity about their purpose, their deep soul purpose, rather than sort of the job or career that many people think purpose is, and then build products and services aligned with that purpose, and then build strategies and systems for their business. So I work with both startups, individuals or founders who are really in the early stages of their purpose-driven trajectory, and also businesses that have a viable model, business model, and have products, and help them refine and clarify their products. So I've been doing this for work, in some form for decades, and have helped build a lot of startup and scale-up organizations. And in my own journey, as I've had my business and worked with all of these entrepreneurs and small, medium-sized businesses, I've come to know that organizations really look very different, are required to look very different to support these kinds of endeavors, as opposed to traditional business models where people were more aligned with a hierarchy or a fairly traditional revenue producing focusing model. That significant shifts in how cultures and decisions and strategic objectives are created is very, very significantly altered in order to support creating an organization from a founder's or a team's purpose. So my work in the world really is about helping create new and different kinds of product definition and product delivery, and also the systems and strategies that help these companies survive in the world and accomplish both, financial and other objectives that create a viable and sustainable company culture.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Graham.
Thank you. It's an absolute delight to be here with all of you. So a little bit about myself. I absolutely love exploring, creating new things, diving into territory nobody has ever been in before. And that's meant that when I started life living in Africa and studying physics, and I then worked as a research physicist in Germany and Italy, and in Japan. And while I was in Japan, I jumped into a new field and became a manager with Procter & Gamble in Belgium, and then they shipped me off to China. And that was the point where I was in China from the early 2000s to the late 2000s, where the oil price hit $150 a barrel. Everything that I'd come across was pointing at the climate emergency was hitting now, not in another 40 or 50 years when I was either almost dead or already dead. So in late 2008, I decided, no, I'm seeing what's coming. And I did everything I could inside Procter & Gamble, which is a for-purpose company. The explicit purpose of P&G for decades has been to improve the lives of the world's consumers. And yet I was seeing so much of what was actually happening being more driven by the quarterly returns to investors rather than truly improving the lives of the world's consumers, in particular if you then take a 7 generations perspective. So since 2008, my focus has been on initially consulting to organizations, but over the past 8 odd years now, very much focused on working with startups and even pre-startups, that everything is started up from day one with all of the right DNA for it to be a fully regenerative company as part of a fully regenerative ecosystem. That means touching everything. I'll say more about that later on.
Thank you. Thank you, Graham. Stefan.
Yeah, nice to be here among you and the viewers. I can't see any of the viewers, but I'm glad you're here. A background. I am Dutch, but I live in the north of Belgium. I feel very European in that respect. My background is technical business, very general actually. Strong foothold in e-commerce when it started early on, and actually, to cut a long story short, my focus now is on setting up Fluid. Fluid is a system transformation catalyst. Big word. If you have a better payoff, let me know. But yeah, actually, my interests kind of evolved from reinventing organizations to reinventing systems and reinventing sectors. So, and that's what we're setting up, the technology and solutions for, the knowledge for, to get that going. I looked at changing the mobility sector in the Netherlands, introduced a platform for that in 2013. And yesterday we had a discussion about hybrid electric flying, how to establish that as part of a transition of aviation sector. So yeah, I'm really interested in how things can move in parallel. So multiple organizations. I think everyone will agree. Organizations as we know it will vanish more or less. We'll be gathering around purposes because transaction costs and a lot of things are happening that is making organizations disruptive. And
Okay.
as soon as capital will move into that, move into the right direction, then we can probably see a lot of changes, and we're trying to facilitate that. So and for half of our focus now is on schools. So
Great.
polytechnics, secondary schools as well. They need platforms as well, and kind of changing the education as well. So everything that comes with, John Hagel uses that term, and the big shift. I think that's really, really important to support that
Okay.
part of the innovation. Yeah.
Thanks. We'll hear more about that in a minute. Thank you so much for the introduction. Alexander, do you want to take your 2 minutes?
Yes. Good to see you, Caroline, Holly. Nice to meet you, Graham, Jan, Stefan. So my name is Alexander, initiator of GaiaNet since March. When Corona hit, we said, let's get together with a group of co-founders and gather together all these purpose-driven individuals who know in their hearts that a way more beautiful world is possible. And that set in motion a beautiful series of events. More on that later. My personal background is very diverse. I like to say that my life started when I was 23. I was living in Prague at the time, Czech Republic, working for Accenture. And that's where I discovered personal development, the how-to books. Wow, so I can do and become anything I want. So I started to read about time management, psychology, leadership, communication. In my first year, I got 3 promotions. So there I was, 23 years old, team leader of 18 people, jump-started my career. So I was in Accenture, I was in Belgium for a big bank, ING, for 2.5 years, and I realized corporate life is not for me. It's going way too slow. I want to up my game. I joined a scale-up that grew very fast from 20 to 95 people in 1.5 years. So that environment was interesting, where I built the inside, so procedures, new joiners, onboarding, KPI reporting. After that, I started as a freelancer. I wrote a book, Weg met stress op kantoor, Get Rid of Stress at the Office, mostly about efficiency, time management, did workshops, trainings. Until last year, I started really my own business. MASTERMIND is a network for purpose-driven entrepreneurs, and that laid the groundwork for GaiaNet, this beautiful adventure here, where we are building the ultimate purpose-driven organization. So it's a laboratory to play around with and apply all these beautiful principles that are coming up in this discussion. So I'm looking forward to this. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Alexander. All right. Okay. So now what we're going to do for the session is we're going to, in true mastermind style, we're going to give you some time in the spotlight, or in the hot seat, as it's called in different masterminds. And so what happens is you go into the middle and you introduce the angle of your choice on the future of organizations. So you can choose an angle that you want to present. You give us a little bit of background on this angle and why you find it interesting, and then you open it up for discussion with everyone. Okay, we're going to have a total of 12 to 14 minutes per person, per topic. So we're not going to get around to having everyone in the middle. There's going to be 3 or 4 people in the middle, probably. Raise your hand if you would like to get in the middle, if you want to be one of these people. Could you raise your hand now, please? Do you have an angle that you want to discuss? Okay. So let's start with Alexander and then see who gets inspired to go after him. Jump right in, Alexander.
Thank you very much. It's okay. I'm used to going first, paving the way, and make it easier for the others to follow. I briefly described GaiaNet already. Of course, we're building a platform where purpose-driven individuals and purpose-driven projects find each other, so that these projects come to fruition faster, and so that these individuals can fulfill the purpose why they're actually here. So it's going to be a social network first and foremost, and we foresee many more dynamics that will build upon there. What I would like to focus on right here is more of the inside of the organization. So GaiaNet on the inside is also becoming something very special. We got gathered together with 6 initial co-founders, 6 people who are all very conscious, very purpose-driven, have been working on their own personal development for many years, to a degree that we reach a certain level of open-mindedness, where, let's say, our primal impulses no longer damage the work relationships. So what I mean by that is we all learned how to breathe, take a moment to respond, rather than react when something happens that triggers us. And that created a really beautiful method of collaborating. One of the co-founders, she's a holacracy expert. Her name is Julia. Genius. She's been in hundreds of organizations, has implemented holacracy in many organizations, worked with it for 7 years. So she said, hey guys, would you like to apply holacracy in GaiaNet? And that set off this, it's a magical ride to experience how meetings can also be when you apply holacratic principles. I think our meetings here are literally probably like 10 times as effective. It's the most effective meeting I had in all the startups and the bank and Accenture, just because some things are flipped around. We work on a basis of trust. So on the one hand, there's very high trust. On the other hand, there's also very high level of honesty and direct feedback. And since we all vowed to take nothing personally and not make assumptions, this creates a lot of space for us to speak about the things that really matter. Now, in the founding team, this is going very well, and new contributors are joining the team. Carolyn has joined the team a couple of months ago. Holly also has experienced some of the team meetings, and many people are flocking towards GaiaNet to contribute to this greater mission. The main question that I would like to hear your viewpoints on is, what does, in your mind, what does the ultimate purpose-driven organization look like? I'm not even going to spend more words on that. Just that. What does the ultimate purpose-driven organization look like?
So before we start with the answers, do you have any clarifying questions, or are you clear on what the question is that Alexander is posing? If you have a clarifying question, please put your hand up now. Okay, Jan?
Yes, Alexander, you started with talking about the founders and the insight, and so the founders, and then you were going in a direction of what I thought it was going towards the teams or new people, and then purpose is for me something larger. So I'm like, yeah, I feel myself, let's say, on two levels at the same time.
Yeah. So the reason I mentioned the team is just to indicate that growth is happening, and so the founding members are now very much focused on, okay, first of all, what type of team members are we looking for? And secondly, how do we onboard them? How do we organize them? As we're growing at a very high rate, new contributors are entering every week, and we're barely, or we are discovering, how to integrate purpose in the way we collaborate together. So I just mentioned the team to indicate we're growing and we're in a process of designing the organization. As an introduction into the question, what does the ultimate purpose-driven organization look like? Which elements do you see when you think of a purpose-driven organization that we in GaiaNet want to take into account? Does that clarify?
Okay. Thank you, Alexander. All right. So please, if you have any comments, contributions, ideas, answers to the question. Holly.
Thanks for this question, Alexander. It's so important. It's the heart of my life, my work, and I think I don't want to make assumptions about Jan's question, but for me, this actually does get to the tension I experience about the many definitions and the many levels of purpose. So to clarify, what does an organization look like that is purpose-driven, it would have to look at all of those levels. And it's actually something I want to get in the hot seat about, but there's everything from my own individual purpose and it being fully expressed and me living my life aligned according to that deep soul purpose, and then the shared purpose of our teams and our organization, and in your case, the founders of GaiaNet having a shared collective purpose that is each of the dimensions of soul purpose for each person being in coherence and then inviting in the additional, as each new layer comes in, there is an additional coherence that's required to really live purpose fully. And then there's the expression in the world, which is what many people call purpose now, that is a product or a service or a delivery system that is sort of the most prevalent version of what purpose-driven means, that it's the product, which is an expression. So in my mind, and a true purpose-driven organization has all of those levels. And, we generally, collectively as a human species, don't yet actually have the technology to do all of those well. I think we're in, in my mind, we're in forward trajectory to accomplish all that. So what a beautiful journey to be on. But that's, in a nutshell, my thoughts.
Thank you very much. I immediately get this feeling of, wow, that sounds like a lot of work to organize all of that.
No, it's a lot of fun. Believe me, it's a lot of fun to help a team and a company go there. It's a hoot. It's so much fun. And everything shifts. Yeah. Like the whole world shifts when you do it that way.
Yeah. Something you said, Holly, triggered a question in me, but I'm going to save it first because I'm very curious about Stefan's comment.
Thanks.
I guess okay. Yeah. Wonderful question, Alexander, and wonderful answers, Holly. My first response to your question is there cannot be one design for a purpose-driven organization. Of course, there are general characteristics, like Holly explained, but my thing about reinventing purpose-driven organizations became to really understand complexity science, because there's so much, it seems like a really good foundation to work on. That's just one hint. Look at the Santa Fe Institute, and there's lots of material in there. Santa Fe Institute is wonderful.
Institute. Can you? It's okay. Or in the chat we can share links if you have a URL you can recommend.
Yeah, I'll type it in the chat.
Santa Fe Institute.
Yeah. Now I forgot. There was one thing I'd like to. Yeah. Well, the thing about just one comment. You said it's a lot of work. There's a lot of things to be done. I really experienced it. Holacracy is maybe a bit tighter. Then I would much favor sociocracy above holacracy, but that's personal, I guess. And I'm always saying Fluid is a platform as well, and I'm always saying we are the platform. So it is the people that are on the platform, designing the platform. You're reinventing yourself as you go, and that takes off the pressure of the work. I also fall into the trap of design thinking it out. It's just a vision holder that you have to have, which sets kind of the direction and purpose. And from there, things start flowing. It's just one comment.
Yeah, thank you. We noticed that as well. We reinvent ourselves as we go. It started with holacracy, and we already started adding elements and crafting it to our needs. We already start speaking about Gaiacracy, just as a joke. We're not there yet.
Good.
Caroline.
Yeah, I wanted to say something that I often see when I work with clients who want to create purpose-driven organizations is that they still try to reach everyone and please everyone. And I think it's one thing that really marks a purpose-driven organization. It's not going to be for everyone, because you have a very strong purpose, and that purpose is going to limit your target audience, and I think you need to be aware that you're going to reach a segment of the population only with what you're doing, but that segment is going to be really aligned with what you do. And what I really like is the idea of the operation. What does he call it? the OS canvas. You know, in Brave New Work, this guy, in Brave New Work, he has this idea of the OS canvas for the company, and which looks at all the different aspects of what you need in a company. So going beyond just culture and strategy, having all these different, like having a whole operating system for your company that's like custom designed for your company. I think that's super useful for purpose-driven organizations.
Yeah. Operating system. You had me at operating system. It makes my efficiency heart tick a little bit faster. Jan.
Yeah, just want to throw in a few things that I heard. Is that you said you're laughing about Gaiacracy, but maybe that's also part of your purpose. Or maybe you said the ultimate purpose company is that you create your own version of, and that's what I see, that the companies I come in touch with, that they all make their own version of holacracy or sociocracy or teal approach, whatever. So maybe that's also part of the ultimate purpose company. And for me, is also, I think, to reach the purpose, two elements that might be beneficial is really inviting the tensions. And I think you're already doing that since you're using holacracy and parts of sociocracy. But what I've discovered, and that's an extra thing that I bring with the compassionate leader, is that most of the tensions that are dealt with in holacracy, sociocracy are the practical tensions. What is not going well, let's say, in working together. Let's say, okay, the internet is out. That's a very simple thing. But I focus most of the times also on what are the personal tensions. What do I feel? Maybe I feel not well today, but maybe also have let's say stress from the traffic, or stress now from being isolated at home because of the COVID thing. So it's something about me. It only tells something about me. But many times, and then the third one is interpersonal tension between people. But most of the times, because we are not used to really focusing it on or dealing with it, it becomes entangled. And then we, let's say, kind of project our own tensions towards other people, to the process or whatever. So that's something for me, and I'm biased, of course, because that's one of my pet peeves. For me, it also helps to reach that purpose. And then the last thing I want to add is also inviting opposites. So one of the things that I see with let's say people are really focused and purpose driven, that they also kind of also get into a kind of a tunnel vision. Like, okay, and that's what we think is the right way or the only way or the good way to do it. But on the way, tensions, but also opposites will present themselves, and as human beings, we kind of have the tension to push them away. So that's also what I want to say, to inviting opposites.
Thank you, Jan. Right.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone, for those amazing insights. Alexander, thank you for posing the question to everyone. And that was a really good kickoff. I think a really nice way of starting off the circle. Who would like to go next into the middle? Graham, please. And then Holly. Okay, noted. Graham next, and then Holly.
Thank you. I'm excited to go next after that wonderful conversation and broaden it and deepen it and build on it. So when I left Procter & Gamble 12 years ago, the question that was driving me was, what is it that is holding our dysfunctional business systems stable in their dysfunctionality? It's now 48 years since Limits to Growth was published. It's about the same amount of time, maybe 3 decades since the triple bottom line emerged, and none of them have actually worked. None of them have worked in the sense of actually turning the economy around and regenerating everything that we have harmed. So I was asking myself that question. I dived into holacracy and realized, well, no, it's brilliant, but it's not going to do the job. I dived into sociocracy and brilliant, but it's not going to do the job. Dived into developmental coaching and I thought, brilliant, but it's not going to do the job. And the way I put it now is that we need to have tension processing on at least 5 levels. We need to be able to process the tension within each of us as individual human beings, the voices that fight in my head. We need to be able to process tensions between us as living beings. We need to be able to process tensions within the organization, roles, structures, and tasks, which is where the different ocracies, sociocracy 3.0, holacracy, all of the ocracies, they all do a really good job there. And we need to be able to process tensions within business ecosystems and between business ecosystems. What stops us from getting there and being able to do that well? And I wrestled with this question and wrestled with it. And there was a point where it suddenly struck me, oh no, this is an old question. We already know what the problem is and we already know what the solution is. It's just we've done it in lots of other places that don't look as if they have anything to do with business. And the 2 analogies that I'll give you. Apartheid in South Africa. The word apartheid comes from the Dutch roots, which just translates into English as a context of separation. And so apartheid was a system that separated people. In apartheid South Africa, if you happened to be lucky enough to have a white skin, you had all of the voting power to decide how the country is governed and what decisions are taken. And you had basically all of the share of the wealth generated. And now you think of a typical company, if you're lucky enough to have money to invest, you get all of the voting rights in the general meeting and all of the wealth generated, both capital gain and dividends. What's the difference? Yeah, there are differences in practice, yes, but the essence is similar. And if apartheid was simply an unviable basis for a country, what makes us think that a similar artifact, the current form of limited company or cooperative, is capable of creating a regenerative economy, capable of creating in apartheid South Africa business if you happen to be lucky enough to have agile. The other analogy comes in with emancipation. If you truly, as I do, see a business, an organization as a living, meaning-making being, then the definition of slavery that the world uses is the application of any or all of the concepts of property to a person. And the company is a non-human legal person in law, and we can look at it as truly a living being. So how on earth can a company truly take accountability for what it's doing and the harm it's causing if we treat it as the property of investors? And that led me over the past 8 years to develop with other people what I think is what we need at level 4, which is what I call the fair shares commons. It treats the company as a commons of productive capacity that is fully alive, fully free, not just absent of property, but it's free for its own evolutionary purpose to emerge and transform and change over time. And once you do that, you now have the missing gap. That allows you to harness for strength and development all of the tensions between all of the stakeholders of the company, because all of them are inside the general meeting with voting rights and a share of the wealth generated. And all of a sudden now you've done what Margaret Wheatley says. If a system isn't working, connect it with itself better. And this is now what we're able to do with the Fair Shares Commons Incorporation, connect all parts of the system that are in any way connected with any company, properly with the company and with each other, which is biomimicry. We now have a way of building ecosystems where all of the companies in the ecosystem have a common DNA and common metabolic pathways, giving us the kind of resilient, even anti-fragile ecosystems in society and business that nature has thrived with for millennia. Jack.
Graham, could you open up your question now, please, to the circle?
So as a question to the circle, I
No,
would say...
stay in there, stay there.
Oh, sorry.
We need the timer, so. Yes, what is the question to the circle?
So the question I would put is, what are the things that you are experiencing as tensions or as insurmountable barriers, the things that are holding us back from where you want to get to? How might those be in some way connected with treating companies as property and excluding stakeholders from governance and wealth sharing?
Great, thank you for that question. Is everyone clear on the question, or do you have a clarifying question first? Okay, I think everyone's clear. Great. So, Holly, you have a comment? Please.
Yeah, I thank you, Graham, for that very well-conceived and thoughtful articulation of the complexity and multidimensionality of what we're dealing with. I mean, I also experience all the recognition of all those tensions, and you know, it's like almost I want to turn around a question to you, because because you know, here in the U.S., corporations are beings. We won't go into that. And what I see as the inherent tension that created that problem here in the US is that people don't have a voice, that individual members of a company who are members of a living, breathing unit they're pretended to be slaves, as you noted. They're not viewed as valuable members. And so I see one of the most fundamental tensions is that unless all of those people are allowed to bring their own individual reasons for working at a company, doing what matters, i.e. their purpose, they're left out of the equation about what that company is about and what matters writ large, which drives the product and drives the systems and drives the revenue, etc. So from my perspective, the most fundamental tension is that we are not listening to the cells in our organisms that literally are the living, breathing embodiment of purpose. And I mean, we know from cellular biology that if we're not allowing the cells to live according to that which is most possible for the whole organism, then we're going to go down some path that's not necessarily productive. So anyway, just a response.
I absolutely love this response. I'd just like to pick up on it for a minute. What you've said is very much where I started. And having done good engineering training, I asked myself, why? And I asked myself, why? Each time I got to an answer. And the things that led me to is, if I'm in a company with benevolent dictators, then people might listen to me. However, if I don't have an equitable balance of voting power in the general meeting to balance out the power that the investors have, then I'm dependent on the benevolence of the dictators, of the investors. And so that's really what I'm about is, let's assume that everybody is more or less the same all over the world, that we're normal human beings. And that means I can't depend on some highly enlightened being benevolently taking care of me. I really need to have systemic and structural right to be heard, the right to attend meetings like the annual general meeting, and an equitable balance of power, so that I actually can stand up and fight for my rights when that's what's needed.
Thank you. I just want to point out that we have only 4 minutes left on this topic and 3 people wanting to speak. So when you speak, can you keep that in mind, please, that we have 4 minutes for 3 people. Thank you very much. Please, Jan.
All right, so I'll keep it short. So you asked what's keeping us from there. I think at this moment a focus on technology and science, that it's, let's say, the dominance of technology and science. Also could, let's say, relate that to let's say let's, for example, spiral dynamics, where we are there, but I'm not going in the whole system there. So that's one thing I want to contribute. And the other thing is, if you look at, let's say, the spiral dynamics also about the consciousness level of people, but also organizations. People are also attracted to organizations that are on their consciousness level. So one of the things for me is like, okay, I might have other ideas about what the ideal of the ultimate purpose-driven company is, but for other people, it might not be appealing yet. And I don't have the answers to solve that, but that's what I want to
Jan.
I would suggest, let's go with Alexander and then Stefan, and then I'll maybe wrap up with a final comment.
Great. Thank you, Graham.
My input is pretty much related to what Jan said. I was going to refer to the psychology of the decision makers. So I think that a lot of what happens in an organization and in the system depends on what happens up in here with the people who make the decision. And to give an idea, now we're building GaiaNet, and it's a beautiful concept, and there's a lot of traction, and the timing is right, and the team is right. Now we choose our company registration format, and we can choose whether to own the business, knowing that we have the potential to make millions and millions, which is very welcome, because I'm not in a good position financially, so that's very tempting. But then to be able to do the right thing, or have a longer term perspective, or treat the business as its own sovereign being entity, you need to have done a lot of inner work to be in that place, because even the me of 1 year ago wasn't there yet.
Thank you, Alexander. Stefan.
Yeah, just briefly, to add to the whole discussion, and it's not a full answer, but it's a thought I'd like to share. I'm thinking of repurposing capital itself. I've been with Philips doing a Reinventing Philips session, and the C-level innovation manager, Jeroen, was thinking, oh, Philips is very innovative. He went away and we all had to laugh, because we know that if you reconfigure, realign Philips in a different organization, it can be much, much more innovative. And the return on capital can be there, still be there, maybe even higher. So I'd like to challenge those people together with you, Graham. Thank you.
How much time do I have to comment, Carolyn?
Well, actually, we're out of time, but I'll give you a minute
to
wrap up.
I'll take a minute.
Okay?
So agree with what all 3 of you have said. That's why all 4 layers need to be integrated, precisely to do spiral wizardry and weave the spiral together, precisely to develop the consciousness of the individual. What I've found working with my own companies and with my clients is if you treat the company as property, that sows the seeds for all of the other layers to be highly fragile and to shatter at the first big shock to the system. So if we need it to be regenerative and anti-fragile, we need all 4 layers to be integrated. That's what we're doing in our startup creation and acceleration program. And if you want to read more, there's the link to download the PDF of the book that will be going to press at the end of the month, and to pre-order your paper copy if you prefer that.
Wow, thank you very much, Graham. That was so insightful and so interesting, the discussion that you opened up there. So thank you for taking things to another level and really making us think about it from a different angle. Thank you. So now I'm very much looking forward to hearing Holly's topic. What do you have to bring, Holly? Would you put yourself in the middle, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And this is so fascinating. I'm loving witnessing that each of us has a preferential perspective based on our own, purpose and way in the world, and probably has led us perfectly to this place where we each have these, amazing talents and capacities. And I completely agree with you, Graham, that it does require all 4 of those layers. And that was what I referenced early about what purpose really means in the different levels of a system. And I think for me, the tension is, are we talking about existing organizations and systems and, organisms that are currently creating products in the world and allowing those to evolve to something else? Or are we talking about new systems, which I think is really where you were focused in startup culture, that can create wholly new systems and infrastructures that are devised based on that intelligent operating system that you described. And so much of my work is working with people who already have some level of system and infrastructure, working with then other existing systems and infrastructures that don't have any of that. So it's a both and. In the real world, the 3D world that we're currently immersed, in my mind, one of our biggest tasks is how do we retrofit existing organizations, starting with leadership, recognition of purpose and embodiment of purpose and my way of being in the world, to create teams that can embody that, to create cultures that can embody that can create products that can embody that. So it's a holistic retrofitting of organizations for us to move into a new way in the existing 3D world culture. And then, as best we can, creating new companies that have this, very idealistic and opportunistic, almost, we're creating coherent fields of possibility is really what you're speaking to within these new organizations, so that they can grow new roots and, seed nourishing soil and grow roots deep in that, and then grow their substantive stems and products from a new place. So I guess the tension I experience is trying to do both at the same time. And probably that's why we're all needed, to be able to face the reality of all of these many things that we're trying to do here in 2020 in this very chaotic world, because it is, we've got VUCA conditions all around us, and how do we get out of this? So there's so many questions that come to mind, and my own awareness, I guess, just briefly, is that if we do not start with, as Alexander said, the leaders or the founders, the initiators of an organization, and help them embody their own purpose, have some understanding of the nature of the emergent field that is available to them if they grow a culture and a company and products from that place, then we're lost at, either the existing organization or a new organization. So that is a predominant place to start, as well as I'm noticing here in the US as an evolutionary anthropologist that we have shifted evolutionarily. So the population writ large is now demanding something different. 10 years ago, people weren't ready to take ownership in a company and say, I want to help make decisions. I mean, we weren't ready as people who went to work and worked for someone who told us what to do. And now we are, because we have literally just crossed the threshold into a new way of being, a new evolutionary stage as a developmental, stages of consciousness person. I'm witnessing this, and people are ready to go into work and say, all right, I want to be heard. So let me have a voice in what is created here. And people are now demanding that. I'm just watching the number of jobs opening up in every company in this country. And they're all like, so companies are shifting as a result of the demand. So the question is, where are the biggest leverage points for us moving forward in the next several years, even, the next year, the next several years? Where are the highest leverage points that we can make a difference globally, either in the current companies who might be willing to consider in startup culture, in funding possibilities? Anyway, there's my question.
Okay. It seems like everyone's clear on the question because you're immediately jumping to answer. No, you have a clarifying question? Okay. Can we just put all hands down for a second, just so we are clear? And then if you have a clarifying question, put your hand up now, please, just so I know which ones are clarifying questions and which ones are comments. Okay, so for clarifying questions first.
Yeah, Holly, can
Alexander,
you please rephrase your question, because it didn't fully land in me.
It's complex. Given the number of intervention points for us to affect corporate and or small medium business culture, what do you see as the highest leverage point for work that we need to do to create these, next level organizations, futuristic?
Okay, thank you. Is Jan, do you still have a clarifying question, or has that cleared it up for you? You still have a question? Okay, please ask your question.
Yeah, just about one word. You said we. Who do you mean with we? Consultants?
Any of us. I mean, anybody here in this circle? I think I guess in my mind, it's important that we collectively grapple with where are the most significant leverage points for those of us who are doing this cutting edge work in the world. And this circle may actually each have individual perspective and preferences on what we work on. But what do you imagine is the highest leverage point? So I'm asking each of you, what do you see as the highest leverage point that can inform where we collectively might focus? Does that answer
Thank you for clarifying. Okay. Are we ready to go ahead now with comments, or are there more clarifying questions? We're all good? Okay. So Alexander has a comment.
Yeah, Holly, one thing that came to mind is about a movement I'm seeing in the business world as well. And this is really about the world becoming ever more transparent. So what I see happening is in the field of employer branding, employers need to figure out their business's purpose, because else nobody wants to work there. Any talented A player, any real professional, they can choose. There's a million companies they can work for. Literally, with the internet, you can find them all, you can access them all. So any company wanting to onboard great talent, they better have a good story. And they better back it up because else they're out before you know it. So I think purely the world becoming more transparent is already solving a very big portion of this puzzle for us. Doing the right thing gets rewarded ever more this way.
Thank you.
Can I just comment briefly, 30 seconds? And I totally agree with you, Alexander, that transparency has reached a new high, thank goodness. And yet branding isn't necessarily reflective of true purpose. That, you know, much branding is really a story, a show, and or a branch to what you want, what your customer wants to hear, rather than something that's going to create coherence. So it's a step in the right direction, but not a very good one.
Well, yeah, you need to do it right. and if it's window dressing, it will show up down the line and people will walk away anyway. So it's only a short-term patch, really. But true, you see it in most of the cases.
Thank you. Graham.
So my comment on that is, I think we need to work on all of the touch points. I don't think that we can say that there is one that is better or worse than any of the others. It's much more, which are the one or two that I personally can put the most power into, which is a function of who I am as much as a function of the touch point. What I have concluded, at least for myself, the organizations where I've worked with to transform an existing organization, in every single case we've run into the problem captured in the statement, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, that once the organization is incorporated and you have investors in there and they have all of the power, it's very, very difficult to get enough of them to agree to reincorporate the company in a way where they no longer have dictatorial power, but it's evenly spread across everyone. And that, for me, then points at what Buckminster Fuller said. If you want to change a system, build a new system that works better, let it grow, and just wait for the old system to move over.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that, Graham, and just know that in the meantime, we also have to somehow massage, reconfigure existing systems and structures, or it could take decades for all of that to occur. Who knows? I think we're all guessing. So yeah, it's both and.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I would like to bring in an audience question, because we have an audience question here from Facebook. When people are watching and would like to bring these insights forward in their own working environment, what would be a first step they can take personally? So since you're in the middle at the moment, Holly, do you want to maybe give your view on this?
Sure. That's what I get for sticking in the middle. So it depends on whether your organization actually has a forum for receiving, customer and or staff insights. If you have an HR department that is innovative and receptive, that might be a place. If you have the ear of a founder or an executive or even a manager, certainly going to that place would be useful. I'd say most companies don't have those opportunities. And so it makes it very challenging to know where to step in and have input. I've left many companies for this very reason, is, things would emerge for me that would make it work so much better, and it fell on deaf ears. And so we walk away from organizations that we theoretically could make serious contributions to. So I think this actually speaks to what Graham was suggesting, is that it's better to start in new organizations where everybody has a voice. And I do see this evolving in companies. I don't actually have a good response. I'm curious if someone else does to this. And I apologize.
Thank you for giving. No, it's fine. Thank you for giving your point of view. Does anyone have an answer to this question? When people are watching and would like to bring these insights forward into their own working environment, what would be a first step they can take personally? Yes, Graham.
I would say start with yourself. The one thing that is inside everybody's circle of control is what they do and what they think. And that's the best place to start. Start there and you will find a step to take beyond that. As Tiffany Aching said in one of Terry Pratchett's books, after you've taken the first step, what comes next is not the second step. It's another first step. It's all first steps all the way.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Graham. And certainly, as we become more empowered in our own purpose and being able to bring that to our work environments, we become models of of sovereignty, of agency, of deliberate and intentional work in the workplace. And so by doing that, it spreads, it transmits, if nothing else, energetically. And certainly creating a relationship with wherever you are in the hierarchy, bringing along your peers and your managers and your supervisors or other executives, a lot can shift. I have actually caused great catalytic motion in organizations because I was deliberate and didn't give up. So appreciate that answer.
Thank you. Stefan.
Yeah, just to answer that question, I think it's very valuable to start with what Jan also mentioned, working with tensions and introduce that practice to become a bit more of a learning organization, learning about your own consciousness, the team consciousness, and learning to talk about these tensions. That can be a very, very good source to start with. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Holly, back to your question. Do you want to just wrap this up? Like, what insights have you got?
And Graham, it was intended for each of us to respond from a very personal perspective about leverage, and I think that was my point actually. That it takes many of us to solve this dilemma of these, VUCA challenges in our world and in our organizations, that we will have to attempt to massage and retrofit organizations and create new startups from a very new place, while we're, flying the plane and building it at the same time. So I do think it's brilliant that so many of us are focused on this endeavor and want to make a difference wholly. And as long as we are in coherence ourselves, that seems to be some of the challenges. How do we stay coherent? Those of us, those thousands of us, maybe millions of us who want to make a different world, can we stay in collective coherence about what is needed so that our vision can be shaped and molded and moved forward evolutionarily, as opposed to fighting with each other? I mean, that won't be functional either, which is contributing to the problem. So I'm grateful for this very conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you very much. I think this is what, why this event, like World of Wisdom, is so valuable, and, why all these platforms, like the platform we're creating with GaiaNet, also are so important, so that these conversations can happen. These conversations, there are platforms where people like us can come together and have these conversations. And I think, really great idea of Niels to do World of Wisdom, so to make so many of these conversations possible. I would like to take some more audience questions, if that's okay. Can we just spend a little bit of time on answering some of the audience questions? So I have another here, which says, how how do you see the tension being bridged by the world on the one hand becoming globalized versus the need to operate on a more local level? So I think it's not a very clear question, but I'm just gonna like take a stab at interpreting it in the context of our conversation. What I'm thinking is that in different countries, there's very different stages that organizations are at. So I've worked in several different countries myself, and I've seen how, you have places where organizations are quite developed and where there's more freedom and more, there are, flatter hierarchies, and we're developing in that direction. And then you go into other countries and hierarchies are still very steep, and the CEO has to sign off for someone to buy a pencil, and that kind of thing, where there's like absolutely like no trust. So we have all of that happening, and we have this global conversation happening about changing organizations. And I'm interpreting this question as being about that, like how do you work with that tension where, you might be in a country where most of the organizations are still quite steep in their hierarchy and have a model that is very difficult to transform. And at the same time, you're, as an individual, taking part in this very global, very interesting conversation about change and transformation, and how do you bridge this gap? How do you, what can you do when you're like, you feel like you're standing above this abyss with one foot on each side, like what do you do? So would anyone like to jump in and comment on that? Yeah, Stefan.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question. My response, I'm thinking about Philips again, and those very large organizations with a matrix structure. And we have dual reporting lines. In the end, if you're in a company, what you realize locally would be your final your responsibility. So and there might be directions coming in from the global head office saying you have to do this, this, and that. In the end, it's what you, of course, realize locally or in a certain region. So, in my opinion, those matrix structures are very, very becoming very old-fashioned because they're not able to move quickly into changing local demands. And as the world is shifting very rapidly, especially knowledge is developing very rapidly, you have to let that structure go. And if you don't let it go, you'll be out competed. I think that's, I don't like to think of competition, but that's still a fact of the world. So yeah, that will be my answer.
Thank you very much. I think it's very similar to what we said before about, starting with yourself. It's like, you have a similar sort of dynamic that you start with yourself and you work outwards from there. So thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
Who's next? I think Alexander. Yeah, Alexander.
Sorry. One of the things that comes to mind when I think about this question is that much of this, these matrix structures and steep hierarchies and also globalization, it comes from the need to control. And the need to control is fear-driven. I think part of the switch that we're making, the shift, is about trusting that the people in organizations are leaders, trusting that when people have the right resources, beautiful things will grow. So it's just a thought I wanted to add into the mix.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the experience I had in Qatar when I lived in Qatar for like 9 years. And in Qatar, like what a lot of people don't know about this country is that 88% of the population there are expats. 88%. So only 12% are locals. And so it makes it very challenging because obviously the locals need to have some form of control over this, huge majority of expatriates that are living in their country, and they can't just let them run everything. And so things tend to be quite tight because there's a fear, of course, but it's also an understandable fear. So I think, we really need to go we need to go deeper and look at more levels where it's like, that's fear-driven, and I agree with you that fear-driven is not healthy. And at the same time, how do you not fear, when you're in a situation like that? How do you actually develop that trust in like complete strangers that you can just trust them to do what's best for you, for your organization, for your country, whatever the case might be? It's a very interesting, I think, question that requires a lot of thinking about, I think. But thank you for bringing it up. Okay, Jan, what would you like to say?
Yeah, a little bit all what we already talked about. Just want to add two things. Is what I see a lot when it's about the tension on the different levels, that we judge one as better than the other. So for me, it's one of the things we can do is look at, instead of judging, look at what is happening with wonder and in curiosity, like, okay, this is something else that's going on. Not my preference, but something else. And then the other thing, maybe a more spiritual point of view, is if I see tension or if I feel tension and I get irritated about it, then it says something about me, what's still living in me. Whether it's on a micro or macro level doesn't really matter. So that's what.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it reminds me of this famous quote from, I think it's Mother Teresa who said it, like, if everyone cleans their own doorstep, then the whole world is clean. So I think there's a lot of truth in that, that we can do a lot by starting with the individual. Thank you for that, Jan. Stefan.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn. That's exactly what I wanted to say in other words. No, I really, when we talk a lot about trust, and it was Lena Andersson, the Danish philosopher, who said, you have to go take responsibility, and from taking responsibility, trust will come. So in the case of the country you were talking about, take the expats could take responsibility for the local situation, and thereby, let trust grow. I think that's majorly important. I can't when I hear trust, I think responsibility, and it has to be a genuine responsibility.
Yeah, and I think a lot of organizations and countries also get themselves into that chicken and egg situation where it's like, people just come there to make money, but you set it up in a way that it's just attractive to come for a short time and make money. So people will not be attracted to stay longer and take ownership and responsibility. So, it's like you have this chicken and egg situation where it's like, well, what needs to change first? How can we make this change, this whole situation? Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. All right, Graham.
Just wanted to add something to the whole trust theme. Completely agree with everything that's been said up to now. And we need more, because in any organization that is larger than just a small handful of people, you're going to have some people who are depressed and who perhaps need to be cared for in some sense. There are always going to be people who in a larger organization are suicidal. And you're always going to find in a larger organization people who are narcissistic, who are sociopathic, etc. where you can only trust them to act in their own self-interest, regardless of the consequences for anybody else. And so I firmly believe in the value of building trusting relationships and having ways of protecting that trust against, let me call it, self-interested, untrusting action internally and externally.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's interesting what that brought to mind for me. It's that I heard about this survey where people were being asked about if there was a universal basic income, would you work? And like I think 80 or 85%, a very high percentage of people said, yes, I would work. And then they asked everyone, do you think other people would work? And most people said, no, I don't think anyone else would work. I would work, but most other people would be lazy and they wouldn't do anything, you know. And it's so interesting that the disparity that was between what people thought of themselves and what they thought of others. And I think that's where a big part of the trust gap is happening, you know, that we assume the worst often about others, but not about ourselves. So that to me was really interesting. Holly, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I just want to respond. That's hilarious. And you can do surveys about it. There's this survey about masks right now that's very similar. I'll wear mine because I want to care for other people, but nobody else cares about me. And what I've experienced is that when someone is able to, and this sort of addresses the question that's present, when someone is able to begin to do meaningful work that speaks to their soul, there's no way you can't not do that. Like, retirement goes right out the window. I like golf versus this. Are you kidding? So that when we all imagine living these purpose-driven lives, like truly purpose-driven, soul level, then we don't want to do anything else. Like, why would we do something else? This is what speaks to me. This is who I am. And so I think most of us, you know, writ large on the planet, don't have a clue what that is. Like, we don't know that there is a way to be in the world where work is something I do to contribute my greatest gifts. And I just happen to get paid for it, and I get paid well because I'm so aligned. And when we're in that place, then work and non-work, like the distinction goes away. And so, you know, meaning and life is really derived from living at that very deep level.
Yeah. Thank you. Actually, that leads over nicely to the question that we've just been given, which is, as is being discussed, more people are looking for meaning in their work. What does meaningful work look like in the future? Can you help create a picture for everyone of that? So I think you've already kind of started, you know, creating that picture for everyone. Do other people want to jump in on that question? Yes, Alexander.
And so, you know, meaning.
Yeah, when I look at the question very literally, so what does meaningful work look like in the future? What I literally see is, for everybody doing a certain job, a role description. And that's what I really love about holacracy, is the role descriptions. What is the purpose of this role, and what are the accountabilities? I think that's an element to meaningful work. And meaning is about the purpose. So having a very clearly defined purpose, yeah, that is the first step, and that's something very concrete that I would see in such a reality.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you talk about the picture, Alexander said very literally the picture. I think, lots of happy, smiling faces. That's the picture I see.
Yeah, thank you. I really resonate also with what Holly said, that, you know, if you're doing really purposeful, meaningful work, then you don't want to do anything else. You know, that for me is like the clearest indicator of doing really meaningful work and purposeful work, is that if I'm living my purpose, I get up in the morning and I'm like, yeah, let's go to work, let's get it done, you know, and I'm looking forward to it. Like, that for me is a very clear indicator that helps me recognize when I'm like doing my most purposeful work.
I just want to add a couple
Holly,
things to what
please.
Alexander said. So while I agree that having a role description is important to, actualize the meaningful work in a work environment, at least my own experience, Alexander, in GaiaNet was that you get to actually create the role that fits your purpose, fits who you are. And I think that's what you're speaking to, so that I am devising a role that best suits what I am here to do in the world. What I can't not do is what I call purpose, and then deliver that, and contribute. And the second piece is that our purpose expression evolves. Our purpose remains the same, but our expression of it, so that we're allowed to evolve within an organization or a community or a group of people, whatever these organisms look like in the future. And we become something else, and then we're able to do that, so that we're not stuck in this earlier expression of us before we evolve to something else. And so organizations themselves need to take advantage of, it's not accommodating someone who's evolving, it's taking advantage of the reality that we each are evolving beings, becoming more and more of ourselves and contributing at a greater level.
Absolutely. So important, that evolutionary, that evolving aspect, so important, to allow us to keep growing. Great comment there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, add a small tip. If you're not in an organization that already gives a space, like GaiaNet, for example, to turn it around. Like, okay, I have this job. How can I put meaning into it? Like some janitors, they say, yeah, I'm the most important employee here in the company. The CEO thinks he is, but I am. Because he puts his meaning into his job. So that was a small
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree. We're going to have to wrap up because we're almost done with the session. We only have 3 minutes left, and I would really like everyone to just say a final word. So to conclude, what is like an insight, a takeaway that you take away from this session today? And what would you like to share? I'm going to put on the random order again. And, I'm going first. There we go. So, I'm really like, wow, this has really blown my mind. And I think what the main thing that I'm taking away from this, and it's kind of been sort of forming in the back of my head already and has been coming to me from different directions and just really been confirmed here, is the importance of working together. This idea of it takes a village. In this case, it takes even more than a village. It takes a global alliance to really bring these changes about. And I'm really, really happy to be in a position where I can be part of creating that global alliance. So, thank you all for being here and being part of it.
For me, very similar. What I'm taking away from this is, having been on this journey for 12 years now, most of it relatively lonely, looking on the horizon, trying to find somebody else doing something similar. It's an absolute delight over the past 12 to 18 months, being more and more often surrounded by people who are also on the similar journey and who have also been lonely for the past 5-10 years, to just finally be enough of us that we can actually see each other without having to look beyond the horizon.
Same thing for me, like you said, Graham. I think that feeling of being part of this global movement is really wonderful. And I only know some of you, and Jan, I know you in another constellation from years ago. So it's good to see you moving on. I really like one thing that I learned from this as well is thinking in these different levels of tension. That will be good for system change thinking. So that's one thing that sticks on my mind, but that's very personal. So yeah, and in general, very good points of view. Great, thank you for that. Thank you.
For me, it's the power of the mastermind, or another group that gathers. Yeah, and the energy that it brings, that generates, and not drains. That's my takeaway.
Thank you, Alexander.
Yeah, I've been enjoying each and every one of you so much. Like, Bart is here in the same room, so there's been some moments where I thought, like, Bart, where did you find this one? And it's just all these brilliant people who see it are flocking together. Graham, like you mentioned as well. And I would like to use this opportunity as well to speak out to all of you that I am here to support you. I believe we are all on the same mission. We're all building this new world. So whatever you're working on, whatever you're stuck with, like, if I can help, ask me. Ask other people on GaiaNet. Like, we're all together. We found each other now, so let's use it. Let's be pragmatic. What is the first step? What do I need to do that as effectively as possible? Who do I need? And then ask. We are one. We are a one team. Let's ask and support, so we accelerate the process. Because I believe it's only going to get more fun and more fun and even more fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. Ali.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you, Alexander. We have awakened. Literally, we've crossed the tipping point. Enough of us as humans have shifted. Just the pandemic itself was an evolutionary accelerant. We are now on the other side. And the takeaway for me is, from hearing all of just this very small circle of people, right, is we have so much at our disposal. There's no way we can't not do this. Like, how fun is that? This long journey, Graham, I so agree. This whole lifetime I've been by myself. It felt like separated, and that we are on the path to the future. Like, we're already on it. We're on the train. The train is moving down the tracks, maybe not as fast as we'd like, but we need to, be in this together and support each other collectively so that we are efficient and effective and coherent. I mean, the internal coherence of those of us doing the work feels pretty fundamentally important. So that would be my invitation and reflection, is that, like, yes, let's keep doing this collectively.
Great. Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely feel like that. I definitely resonate with everything that has just been said. I've always said, like, I was born too early. I should have been a millennial, like the millennials understand where I'm coming from. But yeah, I really loved this conversation. And I also really want to make a big shout out to World of Wisdom, to Niels for providing this platform and bringing people together in this way, because it's so valuable for us to have these opportunities. So yeah, shout out to Niels for organizing World of Wisdom. And thank you everyone for being here. It was really a pleasure to have you here, and please stay in touch so that we can keep developing great ideas together. All right, thank you very much. Thank you.